Hey everyone. Just trying to get everything straight here. So hopefully everyone is having a fantastic week so far, a couple days in. It's been a while since I streamed last, so I already feel rusty, and it's only been a week. So just to talk a little bit about what we're doing today, we're going to be drawing hands, and hands are an important part of an artist's repertoire because, first of all, it's readily available. You have two of them, right? And they're right there, always. But also, they're relatively complex because of all the little lines and everything in them and the shapes, especially if you can put them in different configurations where maybe some fingers are coming towards you or they're straight out, or just the way you curve them can add levels of complexity. And so it's a really great subject matter for those reasons. So we're going to be talking about hands. Today, all you really need is an HB pencil, which is also known as a number 2. So I am going to be using the fancier HB pencil, but as I've explained in previous streams, the number 2 will do just fine. The main difference is just quality. You pay a little bit more to have a nicer quality graphite, but other than that, they're exactly the same as far as their hardness and the amount of graphite that stays on the paper. Okay, so I've got the number 2 here in case I need it. I always keep a couple of backup pencils because if one breaks, I don't want to have to go digging around trying to find another one. Also, what you may need or you may not, depending on how you feel about erasing and happy accidents, but I've got a couple little erasers. This is a piece that's been broken off of a longer one like this, but I've got 2 rubber erasers. So those are there just as a just in case. So I am going to go ahead and get started. Let me just move closer since my hand is actually going to be my subject matter today. So I'm going to try to put my hand in a way that's interesting. Let's see, I want everybody to use their own hand and not just look at mine. I want you to use your own hand because this is how you're going to get the practice. So you do not have to put your hand in the same configuration that I'm going to, but I'm going to explain why I'm putting it in this particular configuration. So I'm looking at an overall shape, and I want some fingers straight out, like my thumb and my forefinger. But then I want some fingers coming towards me so that we can talk about things that come towards the viewer and how you shorten those. That's called foreshortening. So I'm going to hold my hand like this. Now, I am probably going to have to move my hand if for any reason other than to just grab some water. So sometimes if you're drawing or painting, let's say you're doing a still life, just because it's a still life and it's in the same place doesn't mean it's not going to get moved. If you're in a studio where there are many people, things might get accidentally moved, and you might be able to put them back. I always take photos so that I know exactly how things were laid out and what angle I was sitting at. And a lot of times, if it's a studio I know I'll be coming back to over and over again, I'll take some tape and mark an X on the floor where my chair is, and that will help you determine at least the same location. However, you're not going to always be able to get things in the exact same spot, and stuff moves. Shadows move depending on whether you're using daylight or inside lighting. There all kinds of things can change. There were some artists that really appreciated this, and those were the Impressionists. So people like Claude Monet, who's a very famous Impressionist. The idea was just to get the impression of a setting. So you did not, if you look at, like Monet, for example, might do the same cathedral at morning, noon, evening, sunset. He'd do all these different variations of the exact same cathedral. He probably was sitting out there the entire day. And he would really quickly paint one. That's why there's lots of little short, choppy strokes, because you just want to quickly get the impression of what it looks like in this moment and then move on to the next moment. Since we're not doing impressions right now, we're going to be drawing our hands. The idea is that you want to be generally close to what it looks like, but you don't have to, it doesn't have to be the exact same. You can get the general idea. Photos help, like I said, but as long as you have the general idea, we're going to be doing very sketchy work today, meaning that the lines are not necessarily set in stone. And when you do what's called a gestural drawing, you do several lines. So, your pencil is going several times across the page, rather than just one solid line, right? So that's what we're going to be doing today. And when you're drawing people or you're drawing things that are moving, that's what you want to do. You want to get the general idea, the general shape, and then you can add detail later based on your knowledge, or not add detail at all. Sometimes the gestural drawings are more interesting. So if I move my hand, I'm going to do my best to get it back into the same place, but it's not 100% important that it be exact. All right, notice that I do have my paper in portrait, almost said the wrong one, portrait orientation, because we are doing, it is a portrait, even though it's a portrait of your hand and not of a face. We will be doing portraits or self-portraits at some point. But today, let's continue with the hand. So the very first thing I want to do, and in fact, I'm going to move this mouse pad there. Yeah, that's good. Okay, I'm trying to look and see. Excuse me. Okay. All right, so the first thing we're going to do is we're going to get the general shape of the hand. So we are going to do kind of like a mitten. So we're going to start out, and I'm just going to very generally, I hope you guys can see this. Pay attention to this V here. This is the V. Let's see if I can zoom in. I do not know how to use that. So hopefully you guys can see. I'll hold this up soon. So we're looking at this V, and again, I'm just making gestural lines. How about if I do that? I'll just do darker lines. Okay. So pay attention to that V right there. And then I am not going to try to draw the individual fingers. I'm just drawing the outside shape that's happening. Like I said, it's going to look kind of like a mitten. Now I'm just going to let the wrist come off. I haven't decided whether I want to draw the wrist yet. I guess we will. Okay. So again, I'm just getting the general shape. Now, if you see, if I put my hand over here, look at that. What? Okay. This is from years of practice of getting proportions correct. Proportions aren't easy. Okay, and as we go and add detail, I might find that my proportions aren't even 100% correct. This is the kind of stuff that you fix as you go. All right. So now we're going to actually define a little bit more of where the fingers are. So just very generally, again, this is not, let's see. And I'm also looking at this shape that this creates here. See, this looks like a little bit like, what would I say that was? I don't know. It's like a line that comes down and then only comes halfway back up, right? And that's what you're looking at. You're looking at the shapes that everything creates. So see, I was really pretty far off. Okay, you know what? I'm not feeling actually confident about where this stuff is, so I'm going to erase everything. Well, not everything. I'm just going to erase the inside fingers because I think that maybe they're not in the right place. So let's start somewhere else. Let's do this. Let's create our thumb area. So the thumb is like this kind of fat part here. So we are going to see, even teachers make mistakes. It happens to the best of us. So I'm just drawing this general like half moon shape that's right here. And it doesn't have to go with the line. Mine happens to fit the line that's in my hand. Yours may not. Your line may go off up here somewhere, or it may end shorter. We're just going to kind of the general area. The rest of the fingers, pay attention to where the top of the thumb is in relation to your finger. So let's see. Mine is if I were to draw like this imaginary line that goes here, I want to see if that lines up and creates this shape. That's what I'm looking at. This here. Okay. That looks pretty good, actually. I feel like that's a pretty good copy of that shape. Now, we want to draw right here, this line that goes across, that's going to go under our fingers, basically right there. That's what we want to draw our next line. So that's a little bit up. So maybe about here. Again, see where it is with relation to the thumb. Mine creates like this kind of arch there. So let's see. It's actually down a little bit. Okay, so it's actually right about there. Okay. Okay, there we go. So now we have basically our palm. Okay, so this is the palm of our hand. Now it should be easier. And see, now I'm looking at this. I was drawing my fingers earlier. I was drawing them a little bit too low. So, like I said, even teachers make mistakes. It happens. And keep in mind that because I've been drawing for, drawing in any kind of learned capacity for probably about 22 years. So the last time I did hands was probably about 19 or 20 years ago. This is actually it's a good lesson to show you guys that you should probably keep up with this stuff. You know, if I was drawing hands more often, I probably would not have made that mistake. I wouldn't have thought to go there next. I would have continued drawing the box, you know, and drawing the major shapes of the hand. So it's a good idea to keep up with that stuff and to continually be doing the basic stuff, even if it was something like drawing hands is pretty basic as far as lessons go. But you want to keep doing that, like throughout your career as an artist. You know, keep going back to the basics because it keeps you refreshed. All right, so now let's start outlining the fingers. Okay, so I'm still pretty happy with this finger, but now I know that it didn't go down as far. Okay, so again, I'm looking at this shape. Okay, here's the thing about fingers that are coming towards you. You don't want to try to draw the top of a finger, right? Now you guys are looking straight down at my hand. I'm looking at it from an angle. So the angle, I'm drawing it from the angle I'm looking at it rather than what you guys are seeing, okay? Maybe I want to change that. Maybe I want to look let's see. Okay. I'm going to straighten this out. I'm going to look at my screen that shows me what you guys are seeing so that I can draw it how you guys are seeing it. That I feel like is going to be a better lesson. All right. So, well, this is going to be even harder. Excuse me. All right, but the point that I was making was that you do not want to draw just the tip of a finger. You want to draw the shape you see, and the shape I see is like the outline of this, rather than like the tip of my finger is right here, and we'll be putting that in later, but right now we're drawing the major outline. So it kind of curls under here and then comes down, and then got a little shape here. So hopefully everybody's new year is going well so far. I just got back from Charlotte, North Carolina, and I got to see a lot of old friends, so that was pretty cool. Collaborate. Did a couple workshops while I was there. I taught the workshops. I did not take any workshops. Overall, it was a pretty fun trip, but let me tell you, I am very, very glad to be back home. If anything, I like routine. Okay, so here's the general shape, what I've got. I'm comparing it to here. Yeah, I think that's looking pretty good. Okay, now I'm going to come down with the palm and define that a little bit more. It was already pretty good, but I'm going to come across here. This is that pulse line there. Okay. All right, now we can actually start defining the fingers. Now, if you want, you can erase all of these guidelines that we had from the mitten at the beginning. If you want to erase that, you can. I don't know if you guys remember from my first lesson, but never wipe pencil or eraser shavings with your hand. Always blow. That's important so you don't smear your drawing. Now, because we're using HB pencils, you don't have to worry too much about it because it doesn't spread as easily as like a 2B or a 6B would actually smear more. But it's good to be in the habit of that. Okay, so now we're going to draw. We're going to start with cylinders and circles because the human body has a lot of rounded areas. So we're going to start with those two rounded geometric shapes. All right, so first things first, my thumb kind of goes off here and has like a point on the side. So from my nail, we'll do that. And I'm just going to erase this so you guys can see the corrected shape. All right. Now, first thing we have here is kind of a cylinder here. We've got another cylinder here. And this one is smaller. So the tip of the finger I'm going to do as a circle. So this part right here, I'm going to do that as a circle, just to get the general shape of it. Now what we just did when we went around and defined the outline of the hand, that is called modified contour, meaning, and I've explained this in a previous stream, but it means that the contour is the line going around the outside. It's modified because the other alternative is blind contour, which means that you don't look at the paper, you only look at the object. But we were going back and forth between the paper and the object itself. So that would be called modified contour. Okay, explained. So I've got a cylinder here. And I've got another cylinder here that's probably a little bigger than my actual finger, but all right. Now here we've got, and I've moved my hand a little bit, so I'm trying to get it back to where it was. So we've got the tip of the finger here, and then we've got a cylinder here. We've got another cylinder, which you can only see part of here. And then we've got the larger one down here. Okay. So this one, you're seeing my nail bed. So the circle is here. The cylinder is here. We've got cylinder comes down a little bit. So you've got this other cylinder, like my middle knuckle there. And then you can't really see this one back here, so we're just going to leave that. Our last finger, we do our circle for the nail bed. And the cylinder comes to about here. Now this one is going to be a little trickier because it turns, and so we can see the side of the finger there. So we're going to have two cylinders for the bottom. We have a side cylinder and a top cylinder. Okay, you see that? Two cylinders. All right. Okay, now, so far so good. Now what we're going to do is we're going to start, I'm going to erase some little bits here. You see you've got the general hand. Now right now it kind of looks robotic, and this is cool. I've always thought about doing like robot design. I think would be pretty cool. But because of the joints being outlined. So we're going to start smoothing some of that out, and we are going to start adding the lines. Now, I already have this line here, but I'm going to define it a little bit more. This is when you start getting into shadows and things like that. Now I have really stark lighting because I have, you can't see it, it's right behind the camera that's on my face, but I have a light right there that's shining down. So I'm getting really stark shadows like in here and of course on the paper. Your lighting may be a little bit different. So maybe your lighting, if it's like straight down, isn't going to have very many shadows. You know, so your lines may be superficial. Right now, I'm just drawing what I see. By the way, this is going to be a pretty quick lesson today. Normally my lessons are a few hours. This one is going to be relatively quick because, you know, it's the hand. There's not as complex as it can be, there's not a whole lot to it. That's why it's a really great, another reason why it's a great subject matter, because it's quick and easy. Okay. Now I've got, for me, so all of our lines are going to be different, right? Because every hand is different. My understanding is that these curves in your hand are formed when you are in the womb and your hand is curled up. And if you were to curl your hand up, you see that's exactly where the skin folds. So that's my understanding of why we have these. So however you were holding your hands in the womb, You know, they're like little balls. Little fetuses have little balled up hands. That's how these lines form. So I always thought it was very interesting. You know, we all have different lines, and I'm guessing that's where you know, fortune telling and things like that using the hands comes from, is the fact that everybody's lines are different. It's pretty interesting. So we are being joined. I just saw the chat. Princess and Duchess. These are former students of mine. Hi, girls. Thank you for being on the chat. These girls, I'm sad I did not get to see them the last time I went to Charleston, which was just last week, the end of last week. But I miss you guys very much. Okay. So some of these lines you can see don't come all the way across, right? So some of them come down and then stop. So I'm not drawing them all the way across. Remember, always blow, never wipe. Now the lines themselves, excuse me, the lines themselves do continue around, but it's so faint you can't see it. And again, your thumb may be different than mine. Now I'm going to go ahead and round out this shape. Oh, thank you. It's always nice to know that previous students, I can still be in touch with them and still do drawing lessons. So what I did here is I realized that the tip was a little bit higher than I had originally drawn it. So I just redrew that and erased the line. Because now I'm really getting into the exact shape of what I see. And again, I'm looking at what I see. So here I'm drawing these lines and I notice, okay, I'm just going to draw the bed, the nail bed there. And then I come down. And it does come out a little farther than I originally drew it. And there's like this little point there where my knuckle is. So I'm going to make sure to get that. Then we have something really interesting going on. I'm going to start down here. We actually have, this comes up, like I've got the side of my hand here. But the thumb itself goes here. It's like shaped there. So I'm going to actually curve this around. I'm going to erase out Now you do not have to erase because we're going to be putting in enough lines. It's going to be sketchy, like I said before, but I'm erasing so that you guys can see where we've changed. And of course my hand is moved, like I said. And you can look at your picture and try to match it up with what you see there. All right. Now, let's see. Okay. Oop, almost wiped, guys. Blow, don't wipe. All right. Good thing I caught it. Although, like I said, using a number 2 pencil is not nearly as horrible. But if you've ever gone back to old notebooks that you wrote in, I found papers from 4th grade. I'm not going to tell you guys how long ago that was. And there were definitely smudges like on the back of, papers from where the front of one paper would smear on the back. So number 2 pencils still smear, just not nearly as much. Okay. And there are things you can do. There's fixative, or I like to use cheap hairspray from like the dollar store. You can actually use as a fixative, and you just spray it lightly over your work, and that will actually hold everything so that it doesn't go everywhere. You're still going to have some, especially if you're using like charcoal or chalk, something that's really, really smudgy, really soft. Okay, now let's start on, we're going to do this finger here. Now I have, in addition to my line, my thumb line, got another line coming down here, and that actually comes right to the middle, right down to my pinky. See that? See that line there? Okay, and then I've got another one right above it. Now, let's see. It's going right across one of my fingers, so I must have drawn my finger a little too low. And it's going to stop right below, right here, right below my middle finger. There we go. Okay. Now, refining the shape. Oops, my hand got turned. All right, we're coming up the forefinger here. Now, this seems to be a relatively boring finger. There's not a whole lot going on there at first glance. There's really not a whole lot going on there. This line here curves down. See, I'm looking at that. It curves down and kind of scoops back up. Now, my nail, all of you guys may not have longer nails like I do. Or they're not terribly long, but they're a little longer. Comes up, so I'm going to go ahead and draw my nail bed, which just goes slightly above my finger. I'm going to erase this circle part that we drew earlier, as well as a couple lines around so you guys can see. All right. And see, this is why you want to do your sections first, because now I don't have to try to worry so much about where my sections are because we already drew them in. And this curves in just a little bit there. See, there's a little pocket where it curves in. You're also really getting to know your hand. This is why I've said in previous streams that self-portraits or drawing, your own body parts is actually really therapeutic for your mind as well, because you get to know, like for example, I talked about in the stream my nose. I've got a bigger nose, and that I used to be very self-conscious about it. especially in like middle school and high school, you know, when you're supposed to be self-conscious about things, I suppose. Um, you do get over that, kids, by the way, for those of you watching. But art helps that because, you know, now I've drawn or painted my nose so many times, it's an object, you know, it's just, I tend to look at it from an artistic perspective. And as an artist, I tend to have more appreciation for it. Artists a lot of times can look at something that many people might consider ugly. I'm not talking about my nose at this point, but like say you look at this gnarled tree, you know, an artist might look at it and really see beauty in that. So if you start looking at yourself like that, you do actually start to have an artistic appreciation for your own looks. It's pretty cool, guys. Okay, so I've tilted my hand at some point here, so I'm trying to get it back. Trying to get it back. Here we go. All right, so I've got this finger that comes down. Remember, I did the tip of it. So here's what I'm going to do. At the top of that tip is going to be my nail bed. This is the trickiest finger probably out of all of them because it's just coming right at you. So I'm drawing my nail bed. Then I've got my finger that comes off from it, that cylinder that we drew before. And I think I've got a little bit too much finger there, and that might have been there before, but it's not anymore. So we're taking it out. Okay. Now, when you're shortening something and it comes at you, you're drawing kind of the part that's closest to you is going to actually look bigger. So the tip of this finger looks bigger than the tip of this finger. Even, and they're about the same size. I'm looking at them at a different angle. And they're about the same size, but this one looks bigger because of the fact that it's coming towards me. The only way to really get better at this is just to draw it, and just to do it over and over again. Okay, now one of the things I noticed in my hand is I've got this line in my finger that's actually coming right out of the tip of that finger. And again, it might not have looked like this before. By the way, if anybody has questions at any point, please do not hesitate to ask. They can be art questions. That's the preferred, but they can also be questions about me, should you have them. School just started for me today. Now, this actually, there's like a little bit right here, there's a shadow there. So I'm going to go ahead and draw in this shadow. Just because I want to get that shape right. And it will help me if I move my finger again, which is 100% likely to happen. All right. There we go. Middle finger done. What? Well, I mean, as done as it's going to be for right now. All right, let's go to the next finger. Okay. Got a little bit of an angle up here. Some artists I will watch and they will not move their eraser marks at all. I can't stand that. As many of you know, my #1 rule is clean workspace. and it drives me nuts to have like little eraser marks. Not to mention the fact that if one gets under your pencil, it can make life difficult for you. So, all right, I would recommend blowing them away right away. That was for effect. All right, so here I've got a line that I can see right there. But then here it kind of curves. So I also think that maybe I did this just a little bit too far. So now I'm going to, now I'm looking at it and see this line here. There's like a little space between that and my finger. So I can go ahead and draw my nail bed a little bit higher up than I had it before. Now, some of you may know, if you were students in my previous drawing class, I don't generally like erasers in my class, but right now, I think it's important that we get this correct. Okay. I don't know. There's something about that that's not looking right to me, but I'm just going to keep going and hope that it works itself out. Oh, I think I know what it is. I actually have a little tiny bit of the tip of my finger is actually showing there. And so it's making my nail bed. All right, let's just redraw that. How about that? Okay, so I'm going to draw the nail bed. And then I'm going to draw just a little bit above that. There we go. Yep. Okay. And this the curve starts a little bit earlier than I had it. But see how easy it is to correct something once even if you've drawn it, like even if I've moved my hand, it was relatively easy to correct that. Okay. All right. Last little guy here, the little pinky. Now, clearly, I had my finger in a completely different position. So we're going to actually start this guy farther down. If you look, it starts almost right above the nail bed of my middle finger. I mean, ring finger. Excuse me. But see, so the nail bed ends here, and it only starts slightly above that. So we're going to redraw that situation there. And that curves around. And this is going to make my palm in a slightly different place as well. All right, so I'm curving around. And I've got this little, I'm getting ready to point to my screen like you guys could see me do that. Kind of a point right there. And that's that bottom cylinder, which stops right about here. So I'm even redrawing the cylinder and everything. Back to basics. All right. what that means is I need to redraw this cylinder up here. And I'm thinking that the entire finger comes down a little bit too far. So we're just erasing the whole finger. Done. Gone. Disappeared. I have no pinky. All right. So I'm looking at this and I'm seeing that this line here starts right about where the cylinder, the bottom cylinder starts. So then the top cylinder comes slightly past. Oh, maybe that wasn't as far off as I thought. How about that? I'm basically redrawing back in the line that I already had. But, you know, it looked off to me. So I was doing what I thought was right at the time. All right. Oh, that was not a straight line. I thought that was a straight line. It's actually the other side of this line here. Okay, so come up. This actually comes up a little bit farther too. So I'm going to draw the nail bed in. Okay. And now I'm going to get the side of the hand. Now I'm not moving my hand from this point because I am tired of redrawing the lines. So I'm just going to be as still as I possibly can. Which is hard for me, y'all, because I'm a very hyper person. Okay, now we're at more of an angle than we were before. Okay. That comes closer to this line than I was drawing it. Maybe? Maybe. Okay. Okay. I'm happy with this. I'm going to erase these extra lines that I don't need. Now, shadows. So I already did that one shadow up here. So I'm going to draw the rest of the shadows. All right. First things first. And also I'm going to take out this line here because you really can't see that line. That is not real, and I don't want that to end up becoming our shadow because our shadow is in a slightly different place. Okay. All right. Let's get my fingers to where they look like this. That's why I drew that shadow there, so that I could get it correct. Okay. All right. Comes down to there. About there. Okay, so we've got a lot of shadows. So the first thing we're going to do are very large shadow shapes. So I've got a large shadow shape here. So I'm just going to lightly sketch that large shadow shape in. Okay, and I'm just going to do a very light hatching. Hatching is when you just do like, well, what I just did. You're kind of just filling it in. Just straight lines. Okay. Now I'm going to find my next shadow shape. I'm going to say it's right about here. And it starts like it kind of curves around. You know, we all have kind of a point on the pad of our fingers. So I'm going to curve around and come down. And this follows the form of my finger. Okay, so I'm just going to hatch that in. So you may sometimes hear cross hatching. Cross hatching is when you come the opposite direction from whatever way you did the first hatching. So I'm hatching in a a southwest to northeast direction. And I try to keep my hatching the same throughout all of the drawing. Like I try not to hatch in an opposite direction if possible, unless it moves that way. Try to go with the direction. Okay. So we've got some shadow here that comes up, kind of curves with the hand. So what I'm looking at is right there. And comes, for me, comes straight down. Like I said, your lighting may be different. So it comes down up to there. I mean, I suppose you could draw my hand if you wanted to. My hand's probably not nearly as interesting as your hand. Then, let's see. I've got some light on this side of my finger. I'm going to try to leave that. We'll probably, let's see, I might as well erase that out now because I don't want that to go away. Bring my shadow in. It comes up here, like a little bit past. And it, to me, looks like about halfway in between. All right, so again, I'm keeping my shading and I'm just shading the whole thing in. It's all shadow. Now, I'm not going very dark. Keep that in mind because we'll be going dark in different places here in a little bit. And that may be where we start cross-hatching, if we cross-hatch at all. We probably will. I like to cross-hatch. I think it looks cool. And it makes it look very professional. Looks like a, like especially if you've seen concept drawings. You see a lot of cross-hatching in concept drawings, so it makes it look. Oh, and I've got a shadow here that comes across here. Okay. Now you have different shadows that overlap each other. So I have this shadow here, but then I also kind of have a little bit of shadow in here and on the side of my finger because my light source is coming down from the left. So got, and see if you look, my shadow starts just a little bit on the, if I figure that this is about the middle, it starts just a little to the left of the middle and then slopes down. That's what you're looking at when you're trying to draw something. You're looking at the angle, where things start in relation to other things. That shadow I drew a little bit darker than I wanted to, but that's okay. We'll be coming in a little bit later with an eraser for emphasis. All right, so this shadow, we've got a couple shadows here. We've got one that's back here. This is like our back of our hand casting over. And then we've got this other shadow that comes here. So let's see, that starts right about there. Okay. All right, and last but not least, we've got this shadow down here. Let's see, it kind of comes up. Now, something interesting that's going on here, we're going to do with our eraser, but you have what's called reflected light. Right here, notice that this shadow here, there's like, it's a little bit lighter right there. That's reflected light. So it's light that is bouncing off over here and bouncing back up onto my hand. So this is direct light. All of that there is direct light. This is reflected light. Reflected light is the coolest thing to me. Like in nature, that is just, it's like one of my favorite things. And I don't know why. It's just cool. I just like it. Okay. Now I've got lots of lines and things in my hand. I'm not going to try to draw all of them right now. Just there is, if we're going to draw my wrist, I'm not drawing the tattoo, so you can ignore that. I'm just going to pretend as if it's not there. I'm just going to draw the shadow. And that, my friends, is called artistic license. If you are ever working with a model and they do have tattoos, or if you're working with a subject matter and you don't like something that's in the picture, don't draw it. Don't put it in there if you don't want to. That is called artistic license. You have the right to change what your image looks like depending on what you want to put in. Okay, so now we're going to draw we're going to make some shadows darker than others. So for example, the shadow here isn't nearly as dark as this shadow down here. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to cross hatch, which means I'm coming from the other direction. So now I'm going northwest to southeast. I have to think about my directions there. I was the kid that had to spell we to know that the W came on the left side and the E came on the right side. And I also had to put my thumbs up like that, you know, so that I knew which was left and which was right. Yeah. That was hard, y'all. That was hard. Telling my left from my right. And then as a dance instructor, I had to do everything opposite. I had to go and, you know, I'm going right, but I have to tell everyone to go left. It's very tricky. Dance instruction and cardio workout instruction is very complicated in that particular way. It takes some practice. And I've seen professional trainers get it wrong too, so you know, I don't feel that bad if I get it wrong. All right. So this whole area here is crosshatch because it's darker. Now, when it starts to get up here, it's not quite as dark, so I'm not going to go all the way up with my cross-hatching. You can also do blending. If we were using something other than a number 2 pencil, like maybe a 4B or a 6B, we could blend this. Now we can still use the blending tool if you have one, but see how this actually creates kind of a gradient now? Like we've got this lighter shadow and this darker shadow, and already it's starting to look 3D because of that. Here I'm going to add some cross hatching. I'm not going to cross hatch over where that light is over here. Welcome, Happy Death. Thank you for the follow. All right. And then we do have some dark shadow here. So I'm going to go ahead. Again, we do still have reflected light here. So I'm going to go ahead and not cross hatch all the way. And also we've got it gets a little lighter here, so I'm not going to cross hatch there either. Again, just keeping it real. Okay. Let's see where else I've got darker shadow. I think up here on my finger, on this finger right here, I've got some darker shadow. You know, look at your hand if you're drawing your hand and see where you have some darker shadow. I'm going to actually go ahead and cross hatch this whole finger. I feel like this whole finger is a little bit darker than, it's not quite as dark as this, but it's darker than these shadows. So we'll come in and make this even darker. So cross hatching here. There's actually a little bit of reflected light on the pinky too. Okay. So I'm feeling pretty confident with my cross hatching. All right, now the places that are even darker, actually the inside of my thumb. Hang on, hang tight guys, I missed a spot. The inside of my thumb, let's cross hatch there too because it is darker. I'm just comparing that to the shadows over here. These shadows are not nearly as dark as that shadow. All right. Now we can go ahead and make this even darker. So what we're going to do is we're going to come back with the crosshatch the other way. I don't know if any of you guys have ever done like coloring books with colored pencils, but this is the way that you generally want to go in light. This is the way you get darker values, even with colored pencil, instead of, instead of digging in. Hello, Nopester, welcome. Instead of digging in, and to get that darkest color, the color of the pencil itself, you just do several layers. So I'm coming in, I notice here I've got this shadow like kind of comes up here. And see, it makes almost like a little person. It looks like a person, to me, it looks like a person standing like an Alfred Hitchcock. Some of you younger viewers may not know who Alfred Hitchcock is. I would not recommend checking it out unless you like scary, thrillery type stuff. But he is amazing, was amazing. Not alive. Okay. So now, because I've done all of this, I've lost some of my dark lines. So I'm going to come back in here and deepen these. And y'all, would you believe my hand has moved again? This guy just doesn't even listen to me. My hand, that is. Okay. I'm feeling pretty good about, let's see, I can maybe do a little bit of light cross hatching here. Like especially down here in the, I've got some extra lines here that you may or may not be able to see. But I'm gonna just do some extra cross hatching down here to make that even darker. That is the well of my hand, the center of your palm. Okay, now I'm gonna blend because I want to. So I'm just gonna use my finger. I'm not gonna use my spreader. If you have a spreader, and in fact, I'm gonna go ahead and move my hand because we don't need it anymore. If you have a spreader, I'll go get that. So just to show you guys, but I'm not gonna use it. She's back. Okay. Thanks for the follow, Nopester. All right, so this is your spreader. And remember when we used the spreader last time, I told you, especially if you're going to be doing sepia tones, which are like your red tones, to have a red side and a black side. So this is my black side. So if I was going to spread this, this is what I would use. I'm not. I'm going to use my finger because I want everybody here to be able to do this. So we only use number 2 pencil today. So I'm coming in here and I'm blending everything together. Now what this does, and I'm allowing my finger going over the line a little bit. Like so it goes over that edge. Now what this does is it blends all of our cross hatching together too, so it doesn't look quite as choppy. Now I'm going to get my hand back up here because I just want to look. I just want to see. Okay. There we go. So, because we do have a little bit of shadow right here that I want to make sure. What you'll do is you'll take your dirty finger basically and just kind of come up into that area a little bit, and that will get the area which is almost a reflected light. It's not quite, but it is almost. Okay. And you know what I see? There's like this kind of coming down here, so I'm going to cross hatch that really lightly just to make sure I get that line. That's a little fatty part of my hand there. Okay. Blending. And you know what? I did not cross hatch the top of my middle finger here. Poor middle finger just got left out. I only did this part here. Okay. I only did it one direction. It's not too much. Okay. Again, remember to go over your line a little bit. That's going to keep that gradient. If you guys remember, gradient means going from a light to a dark. We're almost done, guys. You believe that? Now, I decided not to do my nail beds. I do have like a white ridge at the top, which a lot of people do have that. I decided not to draw that in. I'm keeping it just to the shapes. That is true. I happen to know Nopester 101 on there. I happen to know him in person. In fact, I have taught him drawing as well. Because I'm his aunt, but he is very, very good at comics and animating. So, but drawing hands is actually a good practice. I'm glad you said that, Nopester, because drawing hands is a good practice for any artist. It doesn't matter if you're a painter or you're an animator. This is a really basic, it's a really basic technique that I think anybody can benefit from. Like no matter what type of artist, even if you're a sculptor, you can benefit from drawing hands because it gets you more in tune with the anatomy. Because especially if you're an animator, you know, you need to get anatomy right, or well, I mean, I guess it depends on what your characters look like, your animated characters, but proportion and anatomy can be very important in animation. It looks off if it's not correct. Okay, so I feel pretty good here. Now what I'm going to do is, let's see. Actually, there's some right here. There's shadow there, but it's not very much shadow. So I'm going to come up here and just use my dirty finger to kind of make that. All right. Now, I told you guys we've got this reflected light on the outside. So here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to use my other eraser. I'm going to take my eraser. If you were using the number 2 pencil, you just take it and you're going to very lightly just dab at that area, right at the edge of the hand and the wrist. Now there might be a little bit of reflected light here, even though these are higher up. Okay. And you can go back in with your hand and blend that if you want. All right, so there you have it. If you want to clean up lines on the outside, you can. And especially after you spread, if you did not use a spreader, you may have like some stray lines. I don't always find the stray lines to be very distracting. I think they're kind of interesting looking, but you may. Always sign your work, even if it's just a little sketch, sign your work. I'm going to sign it down at the bottom. Something else that artists do, you'll see many hands together. So I might come in here, turn this, and I might put 2 fingers like this and then draw these 2 fingers down here. Or I might do a hand but draw it smaller scale so that I practice doing the scale. Well, thank you, Edith. I appreciate that. So now we are going to do the critique. And I just realized I need to say, because I do post these on YouTube and YouTube cannot see the chats, I just earlier I was talking about Nopester, who was talking, he says that he doesn't know about doing hands because he's better at animating in comics. So that's what I was responding to then. And then I'm getting better at this. I actually just had one of the chatters said that they thought it was looking good. So I was saying thank you. All right, so now we are going to do our critique. So I'm going to go ahead and turn this on so you guys can see it. So I have a Discord channel. So if you did do the hand today, I really, really would like to see your work. The link that's on my screen is the permanent link to my Discord channel. It is called ArtShare, and it is a place where everyone can take a photo with your phone and upload it to, and we can all discuss together. Now, I don't know if I could just see in chat, like if everybody can tell me who, let's see. All right, so I am out there now. Who actually did the drawing? Like who drew their hand? Because I'm very interested to see. Oh, you're very welcome. I just got to thank you from my previous students. Always like to hear from them. Oops, I'm dropping things. Sorry, guys. So, did anybody else do the actual hand drawing with us? If not, then there's no need to upload anything to Discord, and we don't have to do the live critique. I'm hoping that that's something I can get started more in the future, but it looks like maybe I'm the only one. So I'm going to talk about, I'm going to do a brief critique of my hand that I drew. Now, let's see. You can still join my Discord channel even though you have not, even if you did not do this. The reason being is that I will be posting updates out there. If you have other artwork that's not related to this particular stream, you can still upload it and I can give you my opinion if you want that, if you would like a professional critique, or if you just want to discuss it with everybody. I want it to be a place where everyone shares their artwork and gets everybody's opinion so that you can grow as an artist. That's really important, to get feedback from other artists. Okay, so I'm going to put my hand up here. I guess I have to move that again. I'll put my hand up here. I'm going to try to hold it so we can take a look at what I've got. Okay. There we go. I got it. I think. Okay. So what I always like my critiques to be is I like to say one thing that I think is effective and I think is working well, and then one thing that I think is not as effective and maybe I could change or add next time I do this same drawing. And again, I highly recommend drawing your hand many, many times. What I think is the most effective is I really like my shadows. And I'm looking at this, and of course, I keep turning my hand. Stop it. I really like my shadows on here. I think that really gives it kind of a nice 3D effect. And I just think it's working well. I think the shadows are really working well. Now, what I don't think is as effective, I do think that this finger here is not exactly the shape. I think it needs to be fatter. Now, that's something I could probably fix right now. So I'm just going to go ahead and do it. I'm going to do it while I'm talking about it. So it's just something, I don't know, it's just looking like not the right shape to me. So I'm going to go ahead and update that. Better. It's not perfect, but it's better. Okay. Other than that, I think it's pretty effective overall. So does anybody have opinions about something I could do differently, or something that you think is working really well besides the things that I just mentioned? If anybody has any feedback, please let me know. I would like to hear it. Again, if you would like to upload your pictures on the Discord channel, that link that I have up on the screen should work at all times. So if you write down the last what is that, 7 letters and number combination, that should always work no matter when you can join. So that goes for my YouTubers as well. So if that is it, then we are done for today. This has been how to draw hands. Again, I encourage you to draw your hands in many different ways, and you can just use the same paper, just turn it, and keep drawing your hands. You can actually draw with like a pen and draw over the hand. You'll see an artist where they've drawn 5 or 6 hands on a single page. Take up your page. This is meant to be an exercise. It's meant to be practice. So I look forward, hopefully, if you guys do go back and do this, I would love to see your hands. I would love to see you upload. Like I said, you can take a photo of it and upload it directly in the Discord app. So if that is it, does anybody have any questions about what we talked about today? I'm just going to take a little sip of water while you guys are thinking about it. All right. So it seems like I don't have any questions, so I'm going to go ahead and end the stream. Thank you so much, everyone, for coming today and for drawing hands with me, and hopefully you will get lots of practice out of this. This will make you a better artist all around. Thank you. Bye, everyone.